Hi everyone, this is my discussion for 1.2, Understanding Real-World Camera Work. I'm really excited to have this discussion with you guys. I hope not to take too long on my discussion, so let's just get right into it. So we're going to start with talking about the ISO, aperture, and shutter speeds. Here we go. All right, so understanding real-world cameras. So this is what it looks like for the ISO. The difference is if you have the smaller numbers, you're going to have a larger opening for your camera shutter, or you're going to have a smaller one. The ISO determines the sensitivity of the camera sensor to light. The higher the ISO number increases sensitivity. This means that less light is needed to produce a correct exposure. A lower ISO number decreases the sensitivity and requires more light to produce correct exposure. So I wanted to show you a couple pictures on Pinterest really quick. This is a good quality image with a bad quality image. So over here we have the lower ISO and speed, and that makes the image a lot more clear. You've got the water looks beautiful. Over here it's higher. You can't see the Ferris wheel very well. Everything looks a little grainy. In this one, same thing. You've got the top here. Got this beautiful clean image on your left. On the right, super noisy. That's what happens when your ISO speed is too high. So next is shutter speed. Sorry, aperture. We'll get there eventually. Next is aperture. The lens aperture is the diaphragm that is in the lens itself or immediately behind it. It affects the amount of light that passes through the lens and is usually made up of a set of blades that opens and closes depending on the aperture speed settings selected. The aperture settings are commonly referred to as f-stops in a specific numerical sequence such as f6, f7.1, f8, f11, and so forth. Lower f-stop settings have a larger diaphragm opening, and higher f-stop settings have a smaller one. So as we see over here, we've got the lower ones and the higher ones. So what we can see really quick for our aperture, got the different f-stops. You can see how the background is super blurry, but the front image is really clear. And then once again, with the higher numbers, the background is clear as well, but it makes the foreground image look kind of fuzzy. And then we have shutter speed. So the high shutter speed and the slow shutter speed. Shutter speed also can affect the amount of light that comes into the camera by controlling how long the camera shutter remains open. The longer the camera shutter is left open, the more light is allowed to enter the camera. This is achieved by a shutter speed. If the camera shutter is left open for a shorter duration, less light is allowed inside the camera. So you'll get movement like in this image we have with the hummingbird. You can see that the water droplet is stopped. The hummingbird's wings are stopped. If they had a higher shutter speed on the camera, it would not look like that. It would be super blurry. We also, this is one for aperture. As you can see, once again, not clear in the background, but makes the foreground really clear. So those are just a couple things with my shutter speed and my aperture. As you can see here with the pinwheel, when you have the slower shutter speeds, you've got the pinwheel stopped as opposed to the pinwheel being all blurry and you can't see it very well. All right, so we're going to get on to the next thing. All right, let me go to my notes here really quickly. I apologize for the short delay. All right, so one big thing I wanted to talk about was camera movement. So the camera movement is very important because it can change how the viewer is taken in by the shot. If you have, let's say, a romantic love scene, you're doing a hand cam with a fast pan, you will not feel what the emotion and depth that you should be conveyed, as opposed to having your camera on a dolly or sticks and having a slow pan away from the scene, which will be more impactful. So if everything's like really still and they're getting closer and closer and it's feeling like more intimate as opposed to just like everybody's moving around, stuff's happening, that's not the effect you'd really want to go for with your camera movement. Also, camera focus. Camera focus is super important. So the way you focus can make or break a scene. If you have a movement when you zoom in on an object, that could work. But if you use a rack focus to it, you will feel that this object or person is very important. And maybe you know why, or maybe you don't. But what you're telling the viewers is look at it without much movement. So it's bold but subtle, as opposed to look at this, you missed it, now we're showing it to you, which is normally what happens with a zoom as opposed to like a rack focus onto something. So camera focus is super important. It shows what we need to be looking at, what we should be looking at. The next thing we're going to talk about is wide, medium, or close shots. I have a storyboard that I did for a music video contest. It won second place, so unfortunately it didn't make it to the video, but that's because they wanted a more limited set than what I had used. So I want to use it as an example for a shot list of why and when you should use certain fields of view or specific shots. I hope you like it. So here, we're going to show you that really quick. Turn that off. All right, so wrong way. There we go. All right, so the scene would open up on a girl dancing in her living room. So this would be a very wide shot. Then up here in the corner, we have a dad yelling at another girl, and it's supposed to be kind of like her sister, who's like this hopeless rebellion, which was the name of the song, and they're like fighting and arguing, and then we'd pan out to a wide shot. So those would be like a medium shot. You know, it's still important, kind of in the middle, but doesn't need to be too close. Pan to a wide shot. You've got the girl singing and dancing. I like to do shots where if you're exiting a door, it could be really cool to just see their feet walking out of the door. I like things like that. Also, you could do a rack focus in this scene down here, number 10, where this is our main focal girl again singing, and this is the rebellious sister in the background. She's on the corner going into this club. You could start off with her, but then focus onto the sister, showing this is why she's important. You know, she ends up getting arrested, going to jail. And then I did a really cool thing here where I do an over the top view, and it would be, you know, the dad sort of talking to the jailer person and, you know, bailing his daughter out and taking her home. So then the reason that knowing your shots beforehand is really important is so that way you can get a good understanding of what you're doing. So as you can see, the sister goes right back into it, into her life and the way she is. And the one sister is sad because she loves her and she doesn't want to see her doing all of these things. So if you start out knowing what shots you're going to do, how you're going to do them, if you're going to do wide, close up, beforehand, it's going to help your project so much more. Because if you're just like, oh, I'll figure it out at the time, you're not going to know what you're doing. So having everything laid out and knowing I want this to be wide because I want to take in the whole aspect of it, as opposed to I want this close because it's super intimate or it's scary. You know, sometimes it can be super terrifying, so you want it to be close up because you want to feel their fear with them. So that's really why it's important to use wide, medium, or close up shots, is literally to show something that's impactful. So if it's a wide array, then you want you know, a wider view. Like right now, I'm in about a medium shot. You kind of want to see my arms, my face. But if we were doing something like really intense and scary, we'd want to do a close shot. So you'd see and you'd feel that I'm freaking out and I'm really scared. And it could be kind of jerky and moving around because maybe I'm running from something. But if we want to just see my whole living room, then we get sort of like a wide mid shot. We've still got me in here, you know, panning around, kind of saying like, you know, she's just chilling, doing her homework, whatever. So your shots are really, really important, and how you place them it can be very important for your scene. So the last thing I want to talk about today is my cinematographer that I chose. I chose to research Wally Pfister. You may not know his name, but I'm almost certain that you know his movies. He is the video genius behind Transcendence, the Dark Knight series, and Inception. His vision behind the camera is legendary. This guy is a beast. Uh, his rule of thirds and use of symmetry is like nothing I've ever seen before. His lines are so clean and pronounced without you even knowing that he is consistently, not even telling you, but demanding that you look where he wants. The building over here, that person over there, the lines are constantly drawing your eye to the most prominent thing, even if it's just a person standing in the background. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a few images from Inception on Pinterest. So we're going to go back here really quick. Go back to there. I chose these images because of their relevance to my point. So we're going to start with this one. I really, really love this image. The way the city starts out close to you and then is pulled back in this very clean shape, it makes your eyes follow it. So you're like, oh my gosh, this place is massive. That's the first thing it's telling you, is that this is not a small space. It is huge. So you'd obviously need a wide shot for that. Once again, he has this cracked sort of post-apocalyptic, almost building block like city, and it's straight up and down. So all you see is straight down that middle line, but those are rooftops and you're seeing the city behind it. His lines are literally drawing you into how massive this is. So he once again, he uses a lot of wide angle shots because he's trying to draw your focus to something important. I love this scene so much. So as you can see, everything needs to be focused on the dad who's dying. If you haven't seen Inception, I'm ruining it for you, but you should have watched it by now, so who cares? The lines on the floor are pointing to the bed. The lines on the wall are going straight up from the ceiling to the bed. The lines to the left are going straight to the bed. And then you have your main character, and he's not in the center of the shot. He's off to the left because, once again, your focus needs to be the father in the bed. So the entire picture is drawing you to this one specific spot that he wants you to look at. He also uses very cool effects. Once again, all the lines are pointing you not towards the focus, not towards the character, but behind them, because they want you to know that someone is coming after him. So all the lines on the floor, everything points you back to the hallway, not to the man who's running. And these are very specific things that he does because he wants you to feel more in the moment. In this one, the lines are now on the ceiling and there's a closed off wall behind them. So it's saying stop. It's saying stop and look at this character. So the lines were going, but now they stopped. So now you have to focus on what he wants you to focus on. And he did all of these things on purpose. None of this was an accident. This was planned out months in the making. Once again, our main guy in the middle, he is the focus right now. So he set them up in a triangle. You've got the main guy in the middle and the two off to the left and the right. He placed them there on purpose, so your focus would go straight to the man in the middle. All of the decisions that he makes are very important, very pronounced. It's really one of the reasons why I love him as a cinematographer. I'm always really impressed with his work. I think he's incredible, and I hope to use some of his techniques in the future. So that's it for my discussion. We talked about the ISO, we talked about my cinematographer, a little bit on camera angles and camera work. I've done a lot of things with cameras already, so I'm very comfortable with them. You really want to make sure that you take in your landscape before you decide if you're going to do a wide angle or a close up for the landscape, or even like a mid shot. You want to make sure if your landscape is super vast and impressive, you don't want to do a mid shot for that. That's not going to help you. You want a wide angle, large lens. If you have like a closed focus lens where you're like looking like this, you can't see anything around you. And you want to see all of that. That's the most important thing, is to know your setting, know your landscape, and have that all planned out before you start working with your camera. So that's a little bit about my discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, and I will see you guys in the next video.